ready to go deep, like really deep. Today we're diving into Lamentations.
Ooh, yeah, this one's heavy. But also, I don't know, there's something kind of beautiful about how raw it is.
Totally. It's 5 poems straight up dealing with griefs and loss and what happens to faith when things go so wrong.
We're talking about the aftermath of Jerusalem's destruction here, right?
Yeah.
Like 587, 586 BCE, the temple's gone, the city's in ruins.
Imagine the emotional fallout. And that's what these poems capture, that collective trauma. But they do it in such a unique way, like how they personify Jerusalem as this grieving woman.
Right, that's what hits you from the start, all those, alas, ikha in Hebrew, it's usually for mourning individuals, right?
Exactly. So it's making the city's pain feel so personal, like you're right there with them.
And it's not just any woman. This is someone who is powerful, a princess, great of people. Now she's widowed, totally stripped of her status.
It's a complete reversal. I mean, think about that detail about roads to Zion mourning because no one's going to the festivals anymore.
Yeah, it's not just the buildings that are gone. It's the whole way of life. That sense of community, celebration, poof, vanished.
Zion's Yelp reviews just took a nosedive. Avoid at all costs, too much sadness. Okay, maybe not, but you get the idea.
Grim, but true. And then there's this whole thing about the lovers. Like, at first you think, okay, the widow's grieving, she needs comfort.
Right. Yeah, where's the support system?
But these lovers are not who you'd expect. It can mean those foreign alliances that fail to protect Jerusalem.
Oh, so betrayal on a political level.
Exactly. But it also hints at the false god, so there's this spiritual abandonment too. Like, even God seems absent at first.
Double whammy, which I think leads us to some of the really tough imagery. The soiled clothing, the menstrual uncleanness.
Yeah, that one can make modern readers squirm a bit. Part of it relates to sin, right? Like in ancient Israel, impurity and sin went hand in hand.
So it's like a reflection of wrongdoing, divine judgment, all that.
But it's also so visceral, so in your face. It's making you feel the horror of the situation,
It's not subtle.
Right. And to be clear, the text doesn't say sin caused this. It's more complicated than that. It's acknowledging the bad stuff,
But it's wrestling with those big questions about suffering. Why does this happen? Why this bad?
Exactly. And to grapple with that, they use these shifting voices. In the first 2 chapters, you've got this third-person observer. Then Jerusalem herself speaks.
In chapter 1, that observer gets so worked up, they start talking to God. It's like they break the fourth wall.
It's raw emotion right there on the page. And then you get to chapter 3, and suddenly there's the man.
Ooh, yeah, the man. Scholars are still debating who that even is.
A specific person, some kind of everyman. It's open to interpretation.
But whoever he is, things get even more intense. Like there's that line about God building a siege against the speaker.
Whoa, right. It's like the divine almost feels like an enemy at this point.
Definitely not your typical sunshine and rainbows theology.
Yeah.
But then chapter 3 does something really interesting. It starts hinting at hope.
It's like a turning point. Yeah, after all that darkness, it's like a breath of fresh air. Seriously. Like amidst the wreckage, there's this tiny ember still glowing.
And that's where Kest comes in, that amazing Hebrew word for God's loving kindness.
Ooh, yeah, Kest. It's like this rock solid, never gives up on you kind of love.
Exactly. And paired with rockamine compassion, you start to see God's character shine through again.
There's that one line about waiting silently for the Lord. It's like, okay, this is hard, but we're still holding on.
It's resilience, pure and simple. And chapter 4 takes it a step further. It contrasts Jerusalem's former glory with the present reality.
Yeah, but it's not just dwelling on the loss. It's setting us up for something more.
Right. Like there's this potential for rebuilding, for coming back stronger.
Oh, and there's that heart-wrenching image in chapter 4 about Zion's sons being like broken pottery.
Ugh, I know, right? They were once worth their weight in gold and now worthless. It's brutal.
It shows how this crisis has devalued human life. Like literally stripped it of its worth. And then to top it off, even nature is seemingly more compassionate than Jerusalem's people at this point. Remember the jackal and ostrich imagery?
Ugh, don't remind me. Like the jackals are nurturing their young, but the Israelites are as heartless as ostriches abandoning their eggs.
Harsh comparison for sure. And then chapter 4 throws another curveball by comparing Jerusalem's fate to Sodom.
Yeah, as if things couldn't get any worse. It's like they're saying, hey, this is even worse than Sodom's destruction.
Whoa. So now we have to ask why? What makes this judgment so severe?
It really forces us to confront those uncomfortable questions about divine justice and punishment.
It's not giving us easy answers, and then bam, we get hit with that cup of judgment imagery at the end of chapter 4.
Classic symbol of God's wrath. You see it all over the ancient world.
Yep, that cup's overflowing onto those who deserve it. But here's the thing. Zion's punishment has an end date.
But Edom, those guys who are gloating over Jerusalem's downfall, their judgment is just getting started.
Oh, the irony. Talk about a plot twist. So yeah, divine justice prevails.
But it also makes you think about revenge and forgiveness, right? Like, is this just straight up payback, or is there something more going on?
It's a lot to unpack. And then chapter 5, the mood shifts dramatically. We're no longer hearing one voice, but a chorus of voices.
The entire community crying out to God. It's like a collective lament, this shared plea for mercy.
And remember, it's 22 verses long. Could that be a nod to the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet?
Intentional? Maybe, maybe not. But it definitely adds a layer of meaning.
Like, this isn't just one person's pain, it's the entirety of their experience laid bare.
And that line about slaves ruling over them, it's gut-wrenching. It shows just how deeply this devastation has shaken their world.
Their whole society is upside down. But even in that darkness, there's a glimmer of hope, right? Chapter 5 ends with this desperate plea for renewal.
Renew our life as in days before. It's a powerful recognition that something needs to change, that they need God's help to rebuild.
But remember that wordplay on return. It's not just God doing the heavy lifting.
It's a two-way street. God returning to his people and the people returning to God.
It's about acknowledging their own part in this mess and taking responsibility for their actions.
Repentance and restoration, two sides of the same coin.
It's a powerful idea. That renewal isn't this, like, magical fix from above. It takes work. It takes a willingness to change.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from Lamentations, huh? It's not just about wallowing in misery. It's about using that pain as fuel for something better.
Totally. Like, it's okay to grieve, to be angry, to question. But then what? How do we move forward?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We see this ancient community wrestling with their brokenness, but we're still dealing with brokenness today.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've got our own messes to clean up. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we take those ancient words and apply them now?
Well, you mentioned honesty earlier.
Yeah.
Like really owning up to our mistakes. And not just on an individual level, right?
It's going to be bigger than that. It's about recognizing the systems we've created that contribute to suffering, to injustice, to all the brokenness around us.
So it's like a two-pronged approach, inner work and outer work.
Yeah, it's got to be both. And it's not easy. It's uncomfortable to face those hard truths.
But that's where real change starts, right? By getting real with ourselves, by having those tough conversations, by actually doing something about it.
And that's where Kazed and Rachamim come in again. Putting those values into practice, not just as nice-sounding words, but as a way of life.
Being agents of change, agents of healing. It's a tall order. But I think Lamentations shows us it's possible, even in the darkest of times.
It's about choosing hope, choosing resilience, even when things feel hopeless. And that choice, that's where the real power lies.
So much wisdom packed into these 5 poems. We've covered a lot of ground today, from grief and despair to hope and renewal.
It's a journey, for sure, but a necessary one, I think.
Absolutely. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Lamentations. It's a challenging book, but one that offers profound insights into the human condition.
May its words stay with you, inspire you, and maybe even challenge you to find those glimmers of hope in your own life, even when things feel broken.
And remember, even broken things can be made beautiful again. Thanks for listening.